Making a homebrew setting for D&D can be overwhelming to say the least. And as somebody who has only ever run homebrew worlds, I understand why some DMs never want to make the leap. Guess I was kind of lucky to grow up in the deep end. But for everybody who hasn't, making a setting for your D&D campaign can be challenging and taxing on your creative reserves. But at the same time, it can improve your game by creating a world that grows with you as the DM, your players, and the campaign that's taking place. But for the tips, I think it's quintessential to get the first one the most important. So, for tip number 1, comparison is the thief of joy. This applies to a number of scenarios and a number of scenarios in D&D, but when looking at it from a homebrew world perspective, it's really about comparing yourself to these professional settings. Things like the Sword Coast or Eberron can look very fleshed out, with already known factions, religions, cults, and pre-planned adventures that anybody in the setting can go on if they get distracted from their main goal. But I'm here to tell you that you don't need to have the name of every single NPC figured out. You don't even have to have the name of every town figured out. And I'll just go out and say it, you probably don't have to prepare as much as you think you do. Because for tip number 2, the best parts of your worlds are often improvised. By this, I do give you a grain of salt. Preparation is definitely key. If you go to a game with absolutely no preparation, it will very quickly fall apart. Trust me, I know this from personal experience. But if you're going to prepare a setting, you never need to prepare every single NPC. Maybe just the important ones that the players come in contact with, like your named NPCs and your quest NPCs. You don't need to have every tavern keep or even the name of every tavern figured out. Because honestly, improv is a big part of D&D. And it typically creates the best moments whenever the DM is doing something on the fly. Because it has the most personality from the DM coming from a place of scrambling, a very vulnerable place for most DMs, and the players who can really feel their agency as the DM builds the world around their actions. Tip number 3 is work in Genrals. When I gave the example of creating a really fleshed out world where every single NPC is named, that amount of work seems very daunting, and frankly, you don't really need to prepare too much, as I've already touched on. And I can't reiterate the importance of improv in your worlds. The way I like to plan things is by starting with the things that the adventurers will come directly across. This is your major NPCs, your villains, your villages, and your dungeons. This is honestly the only things you really need to prepare. While yes, it is nice to have every one of your rooms described in great detail for the dungeon you're going to throw your PCs through, you don't really need all of that. Just prepare until you're comfortable. But don't get too comfortable, because number 4, no plan survives first contact with the enemy, or in this case, your players. This has kind of been echoed in all of my advice, but the painful truth is sometimes you'll prepare for thousands of hours a campaign that is perfect. You have every arc planned out for every PC. You have the campaign to a T. But if there's one way to break from the path, you'll quickly find your players are taking that one path. But that's another thing about a homebrew campaign, or just DMing as a whole. Tip number 5. Don't take agency away from your players. As I've already said, one of the best things about a homebrew campaign is that the fact it can change. The world building can be shared with your players in an amazing way, creating a collaborative world rather than just one you throw a bunch of people into. This can lead to way more interesting campaign for them, and a more memorable adventure for everybody at the table, even if some of the things conflict with your current image of the campaign. Trust me, it will eventually pay off. But that's been it for the main 5 tips on how to make a homebrew setting. Hopefully this helped you, and I hope you'll consider liking, subscribing, and commenting your own advice to new DMs or questions if you are one yourself. This is more about the philosophy of creating a world, not about the actual creation of it. I might be doing a video about that later. But before we part ways, I want to leave you with a gift. I have 2 bonus tips prepared. So the first one, make your world unique. Gimmicks are amazing. This can go miles because there's nothing wrong with just another fantasy setting, but if you add your own special flair, unique mechanics, or even just flavor changes, your players will quickly find themselves invested in not just the story, but the setting too. And I actually have 2 examples of this. The first one is in the campaign I'm actually running right now, called The Powers That Be. In it, the party often comes across different planes of existence, and in each of those planes of existence, they have their own little mechanic. Like for Mechanus, which is where they just recently went, they have a mechanic called Heat, where instead of using their hit points every time they get hit, they add 1 heat. This changes the entire way battle works, and makes the whole thing just a little more immersive. And I also gave them a bunch of cool abilities that they use their heat as basically spell slots where they can spend heat or they can gain more heat to do something really cool or increase their survivability. Another example is I'm currently working on a setting right now for an adventure I plan called The Air Dreamers, coming soon to this channel. Being such, the adventure takes place mostly in a dream realm with unique mechanics that really make it feel dream-like. And while this is very hard to pin down, and I don't suggest starting with something quite this complicated, I do suggest doing something special in your world, maybe more like the heat mechanic in Mechanus. And the last tip, and I would honestly say the most important other than tip number 1, is have fun. Well, DMing is objectively different than actually playing the game, and it often feels like more work and almost like a service to your players instead of you being a player of the game yourself. DMing should feel like a part of the game too, and we should be able to have the same fun in the way that playing it. So, with that, I thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!